Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio, and today it is my pleasure to inform you that the location for the Pokémon World Championships 2019 has been announced. It's going to be held in Washington, D.C. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going back to Washington next year for the Pokémon World Championships. That is trading card game, video game, and presumably Pokken tournament as well. And for people like me in Europe, this should be very good news. That is on the east coast of the USA, which makes it a lot easier to get to from the UK and other European countries. You can, in fact, take day trips from New York to Washington, which is actually kind of cool because it means that if you want to go to Washington for Worlds and then you're like, oh man, I want to go to New York, you totally can. Seriously, Google it. Day trips are apparently all the rage. Although when I went to New York on my honeymoon, the very first time I left the hotel, somebody tried to fight me. So maybe if I end up going, I'll stay in Washington. New York doesn't want me. New York, I got the message. But either way, it's cheaper to travel out there, and that is good. Now, some of you may be thinking, hang on a second, didn't we go to Washington before? Yes, we did. We went to Washington in 2014. Now, I should mention at this stage, we are talking Washington, D.C. We are not talking Washington, the state. They are very far apart indeed. Washington, D.C. is the capital of the USA. And weirdly enough, Washington, Seattle in Washington is where the Pokémon Company International have their headquarters. I'd be all up for going to Seattle. I went there before. It's awesome. But Washington, D.C. it is. Now, if we have a quick look at the history of where these have been held, the first World Championships operated by the Pokémon Company was in 2004 in Orlando. There was a World Championships in 2002, but that was when the game was still taken over by Wizards of the Coast. And in 2003, there was no World Championships. So let's just start off from 2004. In 2005, we went to San Diego. And, you know, if you're a Chargers fan like me, yay! In 2006, they went to Anaheim. Might be seeing a bit of a Californian theme here. In 2007, they went off to Hawaii. And certainly trawling around on the internet, it was the first year I could find proper kind of world art that was used to promote the World Championships. Look, isn't it cute? Wasn't the last time they went to Hawaii. In 2008, they ended up over in Orlando with Lucario being all like, yo, what's going on? In 2009, they went back to San Diego, go Chargers. In 2010, they went back to Hawaii. In 2011, they went back to San Diego, and this is the reason I am a San Diego Chargers fan. I planned to go to Worlds in 2011, it didn't work out. Car trouble, money, boring, etc. But I started following the San Diego Chargers thinking, you know what? If I'm going to go to San Diego, I'd better be a Chargers fan. 7 years later, I've never been to San Diego, and the Chargers have left for LA. Whoopsie daisy. In 2012, they went back to Hawaii for the final time up till now. I was there, it was awesome. In 2013, they actually went up to Vancouver for the first ever international World Championships, the very first one that wasn't held in the USA, and to date the only one that has not been held in the USA. Although it was just over the border and it was just above where TPCI offices are located, and I don't think that's a bad thing or a coincidence. I think that's eminently sensible. In 2014, they actually went to Washington, D.C., whoop, etc. In 2015, they went off to Boston. In 2016, they went to San Francisco. In 2017, they went to Anaheim, and they hadn't actually been to Anaheim since 2006. That's a little bit of a gap. And 2018 World Championships has literally just finished up in Nashville, Tennessee. So in 2019, we're going back to Washington for the second time ever, and with a 5-year gap in between. One thing that I find very strange if we look at the locations, pre-2013, we are talking beach cities. We are talking Florida, California, Hawaii. Seriously, from 2004 to 2012, the only locations were in Florida, California, and Hawaii. Since 2012, we have had San Francisco and Anaheim, but that's it. We've had a lot more kind of cities and running around in cities and doing cultural things, for instance 2018 Music City Nashville, than we have had beaches. And up till 2013, the World Championships were just assumed to be in a beach location. Beach and Worlds went together. No more, ladies and gentlemen. And certainly not in Washington, D.C. And it seems like some of these old beach locations have been ignored. San Diego was 2005, 2009, and 2011, but we haven't seen it since. Orlando was 2004 and 2008, but we haven't been back there since. And Hawaii was 2007, 2010, and 2012, but we haven't been back there since. And worth pointing out at this stage that we haven't had another non-US Worlds since we went to Vancouver in 2013, but logistically speaking, it does kind of make sense to hold it in the USA because of the language, primarily English, which most players, not all, but most players do speak English. I'm not saying you have to speak English to play Pokemon, I'm saying that the majority of the player base does. Please don't hate me for pointing that out. I'm barely sure that is in fact a fact, though we do always have lovely translators on hand just in case. And of course TPCI is located in the USA, so logistically and moving stuff around that makes all the sense in the world. Plus, and this seems a bit silly but it's true, we're all kind of used to going to the USA. So I thought, right, let's have a quick look at Washington, see what we can see. Well, in terms of attractions, you've got the Capitol building, which is home to the US Congress, the legislative branch of the government. You can go and see the White House, which is the official residence and workplace of the President of the United States. We've got the Lincoln Memorial, and let's face it, we've all seen that episode of The Simpsons and wanted to go and shout Mr. Lincoln ourselves. You've got the National Mall, which is kind of this whole area where all that stuff is located. The Smithsonian Museums, and if I end up at Worlds next year, oh my goodness, I'm going to spend so much time here. There's approximately 1 billion different museums, and it's everything from arts to the National Air and Space Museum. Yo, look at that space shuttle. One that's got a giant whale hanging from the ceiling. Probably the National Museum of National History. It looks like so much fun. You could basically sit there and learn constantly for days. You can go and see the Washington Monument, the obelisk that commemorates George Washington, the first president of the USA. You can go to Arlington National Cemetery. Okay, it's a cemetery, but it's very iconic. It's a huge military cemetery. Or, and I will be spending a lot of time here, the National Zoological Park, which I believe is part of the Smithsonian Museums. It has 1,800 animals, encompassing 300 different species, and they are most famous for giant pandas. Look at this giant panda and tell me you don't want to go there. Now look at these giant pandas and tell me you don't want to go there. It's always free of charge and it's open 364 days a year. I mean, go to Worlds and on any day that isn't Worlds, go hang with some pandas. Tell me that sounds bad. And in terms of sports teams, Washington is set for sports teams. The NFL, they've got Washington Redskins, and it will be the NFL preseason when Worlds is on, most likely. The NBA, they've got the Washington Wizards, and the NHL, they've got the Washington Capitals, though those sports will be out of season and you won't be able to see any games. The MLB, you'll be able to go watch the Washington Nationals, and we will be in the MLB season at that moment. In the MLS, there will be DC United, who are still in season. And although the NBA's out of season, the WNBA is in season, and the Washington Mystics play in DC. Although at that point, it will be the end of the regular season, start of the playoffs. The 2018 season ended on August the 19th. Now, they did make the playoffs this year, but it'll be a bit touch and go as to whether you get to see some WNBA action. So, are we happy about Worlds being in Washington? Well, the pros are, It's cheap to travel to because it's on the East Coast and it's close to New York. People have been there before, so it's actually going to be really easy for you to get information because a lot of Pokemon players will have already been there back in 2014. So information and recommendations regarding hotels, food, attractions, etc. will not be hard to come by. That's a good bonus. If you're into learning history, politics, science, museums, etc., Washington is stacked. And if you're into sports, Washington is stacked. What are the downsides? Worlds has been there before. It's not a unique location like Nashville was this year. It's not situated on or near a beach. And I know a lot of Worlds players are into that, as we used to see. And it's not Charlotte, North Carolina. And I'm going to keep saying this until they move it there. I like Charlotte, North Carolina. I am a very big fan of the Charlotte Hornets. I diverted my honeymoon through Charlotte, North Carolina to go and watch Hornets games. And everyone made me very welcome and everyone was lovely and I had a great time. So, I'm not saying we have to have Worlds in Charlotte, North Carolina, but I am saying it would make me a very happy Aussie. To answer the question I've already got from a bunch of you, will I be at Worlds next year? I don't know. My daughter will be 1 year and 3 months old at the time, and who knows what will be going on in my life by then, so I would very much hope to be there, and believe me, if I can make it out there, I absolutely will. But grown-up life, children, etc. The good news is, in a few years' time, the baby Daisy will be old enough to play Pokemon herself, and then we'll be at every World Championships. I assume she'll win juniors 1 year. I've got her pegged for 2027. But that's not important right now. What's important right now is how happy you are to see Worlds going over to Washington, D.C. Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you down or are you glad? Let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, but remember the rule, ladies and gentlemen. Do be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves. Until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.